Welcome. It's been a couple weeks with vacations. We haven't done this. I know our fans have been asking where the heck we've been, right? So you guys been good?
I've been great.
Yeah. No vacation for me. I didn't go anywhere nice, but hopefully maybe soon.
All right. Well, here you are. Maybe if you are successful in convincing me that we need a 4-day work week,
all right,
then we can do this now. I have to say, so let's introduce ourselves first. We are, of course, Gen XYZ, part of the ZGig team. I'm Pete. I'm the Gen Xer, the old guy.
And I'm Peter. I'm the millennial, the Gen Y. Is that a term that people use, Gen Y?
Like no, we just know. You're just a millennial, which is so we. What happens when we hear millennial, Ashley? What do we do?
As per usual.
You need your sound machine to actually have a crowd boo.
I know. Anyway, you're a millennial, and we're not a fan. I'm a Gen Z. You guys aren't a fan sometimes. Sometimes you are, but at least I'm not as bad as the millennials.
There you go.
There we go. So that's it. So today we're going to talk about something that is I'm at a bit of a disadvantage. I'll tell you, and why I'm at a disadvantage is we're talking about a 4-hour. Right? That would even be more popular, right? A 4-day work week. And I tried to do some research on the reasons, the cons to a 4-day work week. Now I can give you my own personal thoughts on this and my own personal experiences, of which I have quite a few of both when it comes to this. But you cannot find online any argument against a 4-day work week. I mean, it's unbelievable. Peter, you looked. Ashley, you looked. I mean, am I wrong in that? Everyone wants to tell you why it's a great idea, and there's nothing contrary out there.
I mean, I managed to find, so during my research, I love doing some research on TikTok to see what everyone's opinions are out there. And there is, I guess, 4-day weeks started in the UK first, if I'm not wrong. I think they did like a 4-day
in the mainstream, yeah. Well, Japan did it also, some companies in Japan.
And so it's this UK TikToker, and he was saying how it's bad. So I guess some people there is an argument out there that it's actually not.
I gotta say, people who do that, those are just the contrarians, the people who are just, I'm gonna disagree because everybody's like, there's so many pros to it. The people who are like making videos to say why it's bad, they're doing it to get views. They're disingenuine. I'm gonna go ahead and say that.
So we already have a couple comments lining up on this, right? Because this is, of course, everyone wants a 4-day work week. What about a 3-day work week? Can we offer that? Is there going to be any opposition to? How about 2 days?
I mean, three 12-hour shifts that's a thing that some companies do. So
that's true. That's what nurses do commonly, right? My wife was an RN, or she is an RN, but when she worked, that's what she did. Complained about it, necessarily didn't love it, but that's what they do, right?
That's what my sister does. She, she's an RN. She works 3 days a week, has her 12-hour shifts at night. And I mean, she doesn't mind it, actually. She likes it.
For the record, all the nurses I know exactly what Ashley said. They actually, they seek that out because they want to do that. So,
well, I should say my wife was working overnights at that shift. So that was.
My mom worked overnights 12 hours for my entire childhood. So you're not going to get much sympathy from me.
She had like a love-hate. Like sometimes she was like, man, like these 12-hour shifts, like I have no work-life balance, like working 12 hours. But I'm like, you only work 3 days. How do you not have work-life balance? But then she's like, well, I wish I was working like a 9 to 3 every day, where at least, I could do something after 3 o'clock and have a life.
It seems like one of those things. It's like, people do it for a while, but it's not like you're going to do that for 40 years. They're like, I'm going to do it when I'm younger because I want to make the extra money. I want to have, it's great because you have those 4 days off. But for those 3 days, you're like, leave me alone. Like if I get 3 12s back to back, like don't talk to me. And I mean, I worked at Target and we had a shift that did that. And those people, like, that was their thing. They were just like, for 3 days in a row, they were like, they were just living at work. Half of them would sleep in their office. So it's a certain type of person that's got to be wanting to do that.
Okay, so let me set the stage. So you guys have all the research, but I'm going to play my part, not because I'm supposed to necessarily, but because this is my mentality. Truth be told, that there's an old quote, and it's attributed to a couple of people. Don Shula is one of them, and then there's a guy named Kim Williams who I don't know, but that they said basically you can be successful by working 12 half days, right? Doesn't matter which, the first 12 or the second 12. So do you guys subscribe to that?
No. I think that is, first of all, when were those quotes from? You said an old quote. Part of my argument is going to hinge on the fact that with automation today, people can do things that they, 20 years ago would take them all day, and they can do it in 3 hours or 12 hours. So why are we not benefiting from all this AI and all this automation? Like if you can do your entire job that used to take 8 hours in 4 hours, why not?
Yeah,
right.
I agree with that.
I get it. Right. I get it. But the one who's going to do more, right, is going to achieve more. I mean, these things go hand in hand, do they not?
I mean, the whole argument with the 4-day work week, by the way, is you're still working 40 hours. You're just doing 4/10s. That's the UK experiment. That's they're not working less hours. You're just combining them into, 4 days. So I think that if you're still working the same amount of time, you're just consolidating it. And I would make the argument that over a 5-day week, people, they're messing around. Nobody's working for 8 hours. They're just grinding nonstop for 8 hours and not getting up for their desk. And anybody who says they are is lying to you.
I think through that UK experiment, I think they did say that it was like successful. Like there was more, like employees weren't as burnout. So there was more productivity going on.
So was that experiment 40-hour weeks, or was it fewer hours? I thought it was less.
It was fewer hours, I believe. I guess it depends.
The ones in Japan, I know that the Microsoft in Japan, which is one of the large studies, they did 40 hours. They did 4/10s. So they would do 4/10s in a row, and then they would have, I think it was Friday off. So that was their big thing. And that, I think, saw a 40% jump in productivity from what I saw in the
so quantify that, right? And I know it's not your study, but what's the basis for a productivity increase?
I mean, I would assume that they're going to say the amount of output that it's Microsoft, so a software developer can have in a single day. The amount of lines of code, however they measure that, is going to be more dense. And I guess you could say that, well, all right, they're working 4 days. So obviously if it's the same amount of productivity in 4 days, then it's going to look like there's an increase, which that's, I think, the argument for it, that you can give people that, work-life balance and allow them to just get the same amount of work done Monday through Thursday.
We have a comment here from Ricky saying I'll show it on the screen. The new 4-day work week process is not 40 hours in 4 days. It's doing the same work pay that used to be 40 hours, but now can be done in 32.
So I'm going to go ahead and disagree a little bit with Ricky on that. I know he's the expert, but it depends on the company, because I have seen a lot of the study. I did a bunch of research for this one, and some of the studies I've seen on it, some companies are doing they're doing 10-hour days. Some companies are doing where they're going to the 32. I think it depends on if people are salaried or not. They're saying, if you can get the same amount of work done and your KPIs don't suffer, then they'll let you go.
So, I mean, Pete, would you ever consider the 4-day week?
So,
if not, like, why? What's your?
So there's first of all, business can't necessarily, a business like ours, a staffing company, for example, cannot choose arbitrarily to take a day off during the standard work week. It's because they could, but their business would suffer. So you could make a case that you could have coverage on both days, right? Just like shift work, if you will, where some employees have Monday off, some have Friday off. I mean, I guess you could do it during the week as well. That it doesn't have to be consecutive days. But then so let's say you do that. Let's just explore those two scenarios. Scenario one being you say we're only going to work 4 days, right? You declare that, so be it, right? We're Chick-fil-A. We're not open on Sundays. Fine. Now that's a conscious decision by them to generate less revenue, right? I don't think anyone would argue against that. You're not going to say Chick-fil-A generates 20% more revenue by not being open on Sundays. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, they choose to do that. They could make more money if they were open.
Yeah.
Right. So they make that conscious choice. I don't think most businesses have Chick-fil-A's branding. Most businesses don't have a line out the door, or line around the building in the case of Chick-fil-A. So we couldn't do that. We couldn't say, hey, we're going to work 20% fewer. It would take off 20% of the week. I would assume that would hurt us, not just at a relative amount. That would put a burden on our clients. It would put a burden in the staffing business on our candidates, their ability to be successful. We would be at a competitive disadvantage. So that's my stance on that scenario. What do you guys think about that? Do you have any disagreements there?
I mean, I could see where that makes sense. Again, I feel like it depends on like the job. Like, again, it works for nursing, but I could see how it doesn't work for a staffing agency.
Well, just keep it to this: a business saying we as an organization are only going to work 4 days. Period. That's what we're talking about. So we're not talking about shift work. Let's put that aside for the moment. If the hospital doesn't close,
yeah,
right?
The hospital's open 24 hours. So
Okay.
So could you make a case? So go ahead. Here's your chance, right? Do it publicly. If you guys humiliate me or shame me into it or convince me, I'm live, right? I can't undo this. So make a case for that. Four Corner Resources could work to only be open 4 days.
And I won't do that because I'm not necessarily arguing with your point. And I think that is probably the strongest point for it is, effectively what you're saying is customer service. Like our clients, our customers, and our candidates, they need us at all times. I will get emails and stuff later at night that I'll look on. I'm not like glorifying that or anything, but like if there's someone needs something on the weekend and they're starting on someone needs something for their job that they're starting Monday and it's a Sunday, are you going to just ignore their email and it's like an emergency? And that's that sort of thing. If it's a Monday morning, we couldn't be closed because that's when everyone's that's most businesses, most of our clients, they start their jobs. That Friday would be, you could make the argument that some companies they're slower, but I think that if a manager needs you, people got to get paid, especially our industry is a little bit unique, I think, in that. That's the biggest probably con that I've seen is having to work around coverage concerns for your clients. People expect you to be available Monday through Friday.
So, yeah, correct. And if you're not, you're not serving them as well as you could be. So you're going to hurt yourself that way. To your point, just like choosing not to answer the phone on a Saturday, if someone calls you and they need you, that's an individual decision to make. I think businesses have to decide how they handle that. Now we're in an industry where it's generally Monday through Friday, right? So those calls typically don't come on holidays, nights, and weekends. So we are kind of operating at the same time everyone else is. Every business is different, right? Retail is open weekends, right? Chick-fil-A, to continue to talk about them, is an anomaly, right? I mean, they have pulled themselves out of that and made that conscious decision. But as a service business who operates in the traditional work week, I just don't see that as a practical thing unless you don't need the revenue, right? I mean, you could do that, but it's going to put you at a disadvantage.
It depends on how time sensitive too, like some of your stuff is. Like if you're an accountant firm and you're not in tax season, it doesn't really matter if it gets done Friday versus next Monday. But if you're coming up on tax season there, and it is time sensitive, then that's going to be a lot more important. So I think you got to, each industry is going to have stuff that's more time sensitive. They're going to have client customer concerns that need to be handled now versus, I guess, next week or
so that's interesting. You would use that particular example. And I know you just pulled that one out randomly, but if I regularly reach out to my accountant off hours because when I'm doing personal, as a business owner, my personal taxes are tied to business taxes. I can't separate one from the other. So I'm often doing that at nights and weekends, and I will reach out to him. I'll text him not on Monday at noon, but on Sunday morning or a Thursday night at 8 o'clock, and he's responsive. Now, I can't tell you how I would feel if he never was accessible, but I can tell you that he's been my accountant for 18 years because he's always accessible in those situations. Not that it happens regularly, but those are little things that make a big impact on relationships. Being accessible. We just talked internally earlier this week. I think you guys both heard this story of one of our great client managers who reached out, heard about an opportunity on a Saturday and acted. Now, everyone had the opportunity to act on this. She chose to. And while our competition didn't, and we've had a great exclusive relationship as a result of that action in place for years. So those are individual decisions and business decisions that need to be made. And I'm not necessarily in position to judge anyone else on how they do that, but I do think it matters.
Do you think you're comparing? I mean, do you think we're a little bit comparing apples and oranges here? Like sales is a 24-hour job. That's, you go to happy hours, you go to client lunches, you go to client dinners. Like that's not something that's inherent in every job necessarily. If somebody is just an individual contributor, a software developer, and they're only responsible for their work product, like barring any huge project deadlines, like that's not the norm. They can shut off at 5:30. They go home. They can shut off. Whereas, sales, or even I would extend it to any service like your accountant, he's trying to keep you as a client. So there's a bit of sales in that. Like he's not just an accountant at a firm. Like he's got his own, personal clients.
True. I mean, so separate, accessibility outside of business hours from, making a conscious decision to shut down. That's a different, we should probably do a show on that separately, right? Like, should you check messages on nights, weekends, holidays, vacations? Should your
do a whole work-life balance thing?
Yeah, that's it. So put that aside. Let's not do that today because we could go down the line. But so let's just wrap a bow around this one. Ashley, Peter, do you want to make a case that a service business like ours, who operates in normal business week, should consider closing 1 day a week for the whole company?
I don't think it should close for the whole company. I think, let's just say there's recruiter 1 and recruiter 2. Recruiter 1 works on Fridays, has off Mondays. Recruiter 2 has off Fridays, but works Mondays. Kind of like that whole coverage thing. That's the only way I could see it working. I feel like if there's that 1 day where the whole company shuts down, then I feel like you would be losing money and you would be losing clients, and clients would be upset because you're not, getting in touch with them. Yeah,
it's definitely a thing you got to consider. And I think the shift work, like we're talking about, is the only way really around it for us. And Pete knows, I mean, we actually did attempt that at one time, having people come in later in the morning, work later in the evening. Oh, wow. So that's something we have looked at.
How did that go? Was that?
We're not.
Well, because it's not implemented anymore.
So let's now talk about that. So we all can conclude that the business shutting down, a business like ours, it just doesn't make sense, right? It'd be too limiting. Okay. Yeah. So now we talk about coverage and shifts, if you will. Here's the problem that I see created there is that you lose cohesiveness. You lose the ability to share relevant and important and timely information. So when we had someone working West Coast hours, let's say we have a meet, because we're based in Florida, right? So we're an East Coast company, having a team meeting. We typically would do those first thing in the morning, right? That's the one time everyone's there before the day really kicks in and it starts to interrupt business in a different way. So first thing in the morning, last thing in the day is typically when we have company-wide meetings. And so those people can't participate in those. So then you say, okay, well, now let's have meetings when they are available. So now we're having meetings at 10 a.m., 11 a.m. that doesn't really make sense. Now you can make a case to not have big meetings at all, and I would probably be on that side, right? But
Yeah.
my point is, when you have overlapping schedules, then you have a different kind of issue to deal with, right? And the bigger you are as a company, the more those challenges and situations you're going to have. But for a company our size, we found it to be inconvenient.
I think you gotta have two. If you're gonna do like two shifts, A and B shift, you've got to have entirely self-contained teams. That's managers, that's everything. So that shift one has their meeting at the beginning of their shift. Shift two also has their meeting at the beginning of their shift. It doesn't, you don't have to try and mix them together. I think that you could, if say half of the people are off Monday, half the people are off Friday, I think you could make that work with, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday being the days of collaboration together. And I think sort of this bleeds into remote work, makes that more feasible than it used to be. The 4-day work week, it has only really been talked about more and more and more since COVID, since remote. And I don't think that that's a coincidence.
So let's use Destiny as an example. She's on. So Des, thanks for commenting. Great recruiter, just very responsive, accessible, passionate about what she does and taking care of her candidates. So now let's say Des is working Monday through Thursday, and we get a call from one of Des's candidates on Friday and says, I need to talk to her. I have an issue that only Des really knew about. Now, you could say, well, Des could have passed that information off and had someone cover for her, and I would start to wonder about the efficiency of that scenario, right? Because it doesn't sound like it is. So now we have a choice. Do we interrupt Des on her day off? Do we let it go? Those are the kind of things. It's not about I couldn't care less ultimately. If you were going to only work 40 hours in a week, depending on your job, if you're a content writer, for example, and you have a project where you don't have to communicate with someone, who cares if you do it all in a day and a half, right? Work around the clock, turn it in, enjoy the rest of the week, work 2 days. I couldn't care less. But when you have to communicate with other people and you're accountable to other people and there's a communication flow that's going to continue whether you participate in it or not, those are the hurdles I can't overcome mentally with these things.
Well, I mean, if you look at, let's just say I, call my online banking. I feel like every time I call, it's like a different customer service rep, and the communication starts to change, but they write everything down in a system. So they know what's going on with the client. They know, why they're upset, the details of, what they were talking about with the first person. I feel like that system would have to come into play, where also in nursing, you're changing shifts with another nurse. You need that communication in order to, you have to know what's going on with your patient. So I feel like it'd have to be a form of serious communication where everything would have to be written in a system. So that way, let's just say the person handles the situation with the client really needs Des, then Des would read the system the next day and be like, okay, this is what happened in this conversation, blah, 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 please contact them again.
Yeah, you're describing a CRM system. And I think that's that's part of the automation I was referring to earlier that makes it easier to that, where it doesn't necessarily, if Des has put in really meticulous notes and everything, theoretically, if Ashley's recruiting, Ashley should be able to pick up exactly where she left off with it. Now I know that is easier said than done, but that's the theoretical, scientific vacuum that it should exist in. That it shouldn't matter the exact person. Anybody should be able to see where the last person left off and what's going on and quickly get up to speed.
That's assuming that, incorrectly assuming in this case, I think that I could just replace Des that easily. That I could, because we're in a relationship-based business. And so while Des could pass on notes to say, I talked to, Jane Smith about ABC, and this is the salary that we're talking about, representing her, for, I don't know Jane, right? And there's in the industry that we're in, staffing, recruiting, it's very intimate. And if it's not so simple to replace someone's knowledge, someone's relationship, it's just not a plug and play scenario.
Do you think that, say, 80% of the stuff could be handled by that? I would say yes. That I agree with that. For 20% of the stuff that's more But if somebody just needs a password reset or needs a whatever, most of the time I deal with this all the time. People reach out, and it doesn't need to be that exact person. They just need someone. That's the person they know. So that's the person that helps them. And I think that it's just a gray area where, maybe the answer is is you work 4 days and your 5th day you're on call or something like that for emergencies, for something like that. You're not necessarily working, you're just reacting if there are any emergencies. And there are a lot of companies I know that do that as well. So I wanted to make sure I bring that up, that the on-call thing, it's not an all or nothing. I think that there's a lot of different areas.
So that I can, buy into, right? That as long as
I'm chipping away.
Okay. Yes. However, that's the elephant in the room is my contention that, I was raised professionally on the belief that if I outwork you, by the way, Des is actively commenting in support of what you're saying. I'm shocked. That if when I started the staffing company, I started Four Corner Resources, I didn't have, as you guys know, I didn't have a lot of history. I didn't have any recent history in the industry. I didn't have any clients really starting from scratch. What I had was a willingness to outwork everyone else, to kill myself trying, so to speak. And that proved to be enough. I believed that it would be enough. Of course, I had some fundamental skills and abilities, but that was what I offered anyone who would ask me, why should I give you a chance? Why should I work with you? It's like, I'm going to kill myself trying. And I did. And I worked ridiculous hours. And I very much attribute that to my success, my ability to launch a business. My former employer of many years ago was founded and thrived for years on outworking everyone. So that's a pretty deeply ingrained mentality for me, and one that still holds true today, right? If I'm competing against you, I'm going to outwork you and I'm going to win as a result. So yeah, what's the argument to that?
I mean, we've had, I know, past issues of podcasts where we talked about particularly Gen Z, that they don't care about that as much. They just want to do a good job and go home and have that work-life balance. So how do you make those work?
That's why I feel like it's like a constant from one thing, a trend that I keep seeing throughout our Gen XYZ series. And the one thing we can never agree on is that. This
would be boring if we agreed on everything.
This is the Gen Z perspective. And it's sad, but things are changing. And unfortunately, now that's like the mentality engraved in the heads of Gen Zers. And then you wonder what's going to happen to the next generation. Is it going to get worse? Is it going to change and get back to working hard? And that's where you get success from. Like, it's just that ongoing. And that's why I feel like we can never agree, because it's just.
So what's the argument though? Like, tell me where.
For all the Gen Zers out there, by the way, what I was saying was that they're saying work smarter, not harder. Like, not necessarily that they're going to do a bad job on purpose.
Okay, and so to that, I always say, well, I'll work equally smart. Now what?
I think
because I'm working harder, I'm not going to arbitrarily work less intelligently. That's a weird phrase to me. Work smarter, not harder.
But
what if I do both?
Again, I just feel like the tools we have nowadays, it's just so easy to just not have to work as much, but be smart. Like, again, with all this AI tools and everything, like, you can consolidate all that time and just work smarter.
So let's use real world examples, since we're based in the staffing industry, right? Mm-hmm. The position needs to be filled. A software developer opening needs to be filled. I have a competitor from another company, trying to fill that position too. We start at the same time, and let's just assume, for fun, that we have the same level of experience and the same tools at our disposal, right? We're pretty competitive organizations. I get a call at 5:00 for that opening, right? Let's say I get a call right now for that opening on a Thursday. I have a choice. I can pack up at 5 and go home, or I can try to fill that position. Who's working harder? Who's working smarter in that scenario?
Well, what you're describing, and that's sure you could work beyond it, but then say the rest of the time when I'm not having to do that, or are you just saying that this is constantly that I am having to always struggle and fight and work, extra against everybody all the time? Because I'm going to say there's diminishing returns and people are going to burn out, which we've also had an issue of where we talk about that. So I think that in that case, in that scenario, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. And I just think that what we're talking about in the majority of the time when you are not down to the wire against in a head-to-head type of situation, I think people can take a look and say, all right, well, maybe now I can let this, the system do some work for me. We've got automated sourcing. I mean, I'm talking about recruiting specifically, obviously, but there's tools like that used to take you more time, and you can have the system work for you. That's the smarter, I think, in the work smarter. Not
well,
harder.
but yeah, I think that what that argument, doesn't consider is that everyone has access to the same tools at the same time, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm still recruiting without, online access. I'm not getting resumes mailed to me like I used to still,
Yeah.
right?
Get
So
it fast.
it's relative, I think, at that point.
Listen, you would have to talk to maybe a Gen Zer who is making the argument for it. But the way I understand it is that you're going to do your best. You're going to try and fill. You say you've got 10 roles. You're going to try and fill 5 of them. You're not going to try and fill all 10 of them because you're not going to try and outwork every single person all the time, because that's the mindset is that I'm not going to burn myself out because I'm just going to do enough that I can keep moving on and maybe do 6 next week or something like that.
Okay, so let's put this comment up. I know, Ashley, you're saying it too, right? Like I can't see who this is from. It just says LinkedIn user. So that's great. So the comment is who's interested in working hard and getting burnt out for who? So let's address these things one at a time, right? I'm interested in working hard for my own benefit.
Okay.
So now we need to talk about what ZenGig is really represents. It represents career success, satisfaction for the individual. So some individuals may very well say, my career objective is to work as little as possible and to still be able to pay my bills, right? Mm-hmm. To put in the fewest number of hours. And if that is success to you as an individual, then that should be your goal, right? Like you should craft your work life around that, your profession, what you choose to do, craft it around that. If on the other hand, you say, well, I'm interested in having as much responsibility as I can, having a big title, being an executive within an organization. I'm interested in financial gain, and all of these things exist, right? I mean, the spectrum is very full from one side to the next. So I think first you have to understand that. I'm admittedly coming from the perspective of ambition and financial and professional growth. When I say work harder, right, that would be the means to the end. So what do you guys think about that? Like that question of burnout and like why should you work hard?
I mean, I've always said if a company doesn't appreciate you, and like this user said, when it comes time to a review and the raise time and they're not recognizing you, if you work hard and then I go to my manager and I say I did X, Y, and Z, I worked all these extra hours, and they say great, pat on the back and move along, and they're not compensating me, they're not promoting me, there's no upward mobility, then I totally agree that like there's no point in going the extra mile. And I think those companies are the ones that see people jump ship. And we've got plenty of articles, I know that we've written on that, where we talk about not staying in a bad situation. And I would say that's a bad situation if someone's having, you're working hard, you're not getting, people aren't doing it out of the kindness of their heart. So
yeah, Gen Z agrees with millennial.
Well, I mean, I think that that's a weird part of the equation just to add into it, right? Like I assume that there's going to be reward. So I would never suggest anyone works hard just because. So I think maybe that question was intended to be rhetorical. I look at it as, well, I'm working hard for me and my family. Like that's my priority.
Well, that's inherent to what you're saying. You're saying why I'm going, to use your example before, I'm going head to head against another recruiter. I'm going head to head against another salesperson. You're getting directly compensated for that. So yeah, you are incentivized to work harder. Not everyone is in that type of scenario. If you are just a tiny cog in a large enterprise company, and whether you work harder,
make it real, like be specific, describe the scenario.
I don't know if I'm a billing, accounts receivable analyst at Amazon, and it doesn't matter if I work extra hard and I process a couple more invoices, like what does that do for me personally? I think that's where people that's the type of role that you see people saying like, all right, I'm not going to work hard, and then go back to the quiet quitting and everything like that. That people aren't going to burn themselves out and work 12-hour shifts because it does, that doesn't put any extra dollars in their pocket at the end of the day. They're not seeing that. I think if they did, then they would work harder. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents on that.
So I don't think in this fictitious scenario, right, that Amazon is expecting that employee to do that, right? Or
it would be the manager expecting their subordinates to do it, and I know every manager is different. So I have no insight. I mean, again, it's completely fictitious, right? But if Amazon had a scenario where they like to advance people within their organization, and by standing out, you could do that. I mean, I could make a case why that would still be a viable thing to do. But I think where you're going with this, it's not going to matter. Well, then that's completely different. And you just have to, as an individual, make a decision whether you're in a situation that's good for you in that case. That's the career's end. That's finding your career's end. It's finding the place that you feel valued and finding, what your goals matter. If your goals are, I want to work at a company that I can do a good job. They're not going to push me extra. They're going to pay me a decent, wage, good enough to pay my bills, whatever. I can go home at 5:30 every single day. That's great. And that's fine. Same thing, like you said, if you're trying to climb and you want a fancy title and you want to be the senior executive of whatever, that's fine as well. It's just, I think that this whole, since we're getting off topic on the 4-day work week thing, I think people pushing, I'm trying to rein us back in here. I think that's where it comes to people are willing to work harder if the company if they're in a job that they like, that they feel like is rewarding them for it. People aren't going to do something for nothing. I've said that several times now.
Maybe we should make this a whole topic for next time, because I feel like we could just rant about this and go on.
I think we already did. I think we just.
I had videos to show for 4 days.
That's right. Okay, so all right, you know what? Let's go back to the 4-day work week for our next show next week. Okay. We'll stick with it because we did not get through this. We got sidetracked, which we tend to do. I don't think.
I feel like it's all rolled together, though. I mean, I feel like you can't talk about 4-day work week without talking about burnout, without talking about they all go together. So I don't feel too bad. We're not on a random tangent talking about animals or something.
One video in particular for Gen X.
Okay, let's see it.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get it to play.
Technical issues. I think today will be successful.
Good job.
Oops. Hold on.
That's one strike.
Okay. Can everyone see it?
Yeah, unmute her.
Okay.
Got a new job. Congrats. What's it like? You work a 4-day work week. Wow. What's that mean? You work 4 days a week. Duh. So it's part-time. Oh, you work 10 hours a day, 4 days a week. Sounds like part-time to me. No, every week you get a 3-day holiday. No, I know it's 40 hours, but it's only 4 days, so. You know what you could do with all that free time? Get another job.
Okay. Okay, let me say.
I also walked up ways in the snow both ways to school.
That's right. That's right. Look, I've said this on record many times. When my wife was working as a nurse, 12-hour shifts, she would come home, she would run in the door, go straight to the bathroom, and because she hadn't stopped. And without exception, when I think of a nurse, I think of a teacher, their jobs are infinitely more difficult than those of us who sit on our butts all day, staring at a computer, doing what we're doing, talking. I mean, you can't even compare them. And that's where like the injustice of all this comes in for me, is that, yeah, they only work 36 hours, right? In that, on that shift, please tell me my math is right on that. They only, they log fewer than 40 hours, but the work they have to do mentally and physically, as a teacher or a nurse, is so much more difficult than anything I've ever done professionally. It's not even fair, the way that goes. So I think all of this comes down to you really have to know yourself, your objectives, and then make a decision as whether you're in the right situation, right, for what you want. And business is the same thing, right? A business has to make a decision, just like Chick-fil-A did. I mean, that was bold, right? I don't know if they always did that from the time they were open, probably, but I mean,
like you said, they know that you got to know yourself. You got to be honest with like who you are, like as a company or as an individual. And you're like, here are my values. Here's what I'm looking for. And in Chick-fil-A's scenario, they did that. They're like, we value that Sunday is day of rest, whatever. We are going to be close. We are not going to, even though we could make 20% more, in profits, I'd say even more, because everybody wants Chick-fil-A on the weekends. But I mean, they're honest with themselves.
All right. So thanks for the comment. Yep. Me too. Right. So I get it, but I don't necessarily think it's a good thing. Right. So that as I talk about the habits that were ingrained in me right from the start. That's not good. It's not ideal, but it's a conscious decision at this point, right? I mean, look, if I'm being completely transparent, technically I could probably retire if I wanted to at this point, but I wouldn't be able to retire at the lifestyle that I want to maintain. I wouldn't be able to provide the things that I want to continue to provide for my family, over time, and have the retirement that I'd want. So it's a conscious decision, to work. So my unique situation is no one's forcing me to do it. But thankfully I'm able to spend time working on things I enjoy and like, and with people who I enjoy and like. And that's a huge component of it. And when I think of ZenGig, a lot of it is, hopefully encouraging people to not settle and because if you do really like what you do, and then that work doesn't feel burdensome. And I think being at that point in my career and my professional life is a gift that I have. So it gets a little blurry for me, admittedly, because I'm like, well, I like working, right? But 20 years ago, I didn't like whatever I was doing at the time, probably.
Well, that should be our actual tagline, is don't settle, because I mean, that's where I can get behind that. That is whatever you want to do. Like if you want to do more of this or more of that, like find that. Don't just get stuck in a situation. If Pete was having to be a nurse, I don't know if he would be so happy to not retire. But I think that you got to be honest with yourself and what you're looking for. So I agree with that.
Great way to end this, I guess.
Okay, so since we're going to talk about 4-day work week next week, here's a challenge. I'll say it on camera. You guys didn't convince me today that that's what we should do. So you have a week. You have a week to convince me. So
okay.
There's your
I have
challenge.
some videos. Again, the videos, if I had just showed them, man. Like,
if you just find that really funny meme, it will convince you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say a TikTok video or a meme is probably not gonna be the thing that pushes me over the edge. But anyone listening, come with your best shot. Convince me that we should do this.
Another thing we gotta talk about that I always see all over TikTok. It's a lot of people saying, stop working and settling in a 9-to-5, like make a change, like, go do something else. Like, don't stick to the 9-to-5 life. That's a whole,
like working overnights.
I don't know, but it's just a whole can of worms to open.
And I'm a huge proponent of that. I mean, the freelance market is, we work with a lot of freelancers, as you guys know, and they set their own schedule. They, but nights and weekends and days all blur together there. I'm a huge fan of that. Right. And it really does give them individually the freedom to decide how much effort they want to put forth. Right. And there's every decision has some sort of result that comes from it. Right. And, it's very individual, but that's the point. I mean, is it, like Peter said, you've got to know what it is you're doing it for, and then put together your plan and execute accordingly. It's definitely not one size fits all.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So is that it for today then?
I think so. I think we did it.
You have a song for me, a Gen X song that this Gen Zer should,
Oh, no, I don't. I do not have no.
We need to do trivia next week or something. Just have
Yeah.
lots of 90s
Next
trivia.
week, have a song for me. I'll
All right.
close my eyes and I'll guess.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So I think that's it for now. Thank you for everyone who's been hanging with us and for all the comments today. And so next week for our work week, let's see. It'll be me against the world. I'm up for it.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
See you
Bye.
See you guys.